It is what it is. Just checking in edition. Gotta raise my fingers up higher. Um, been receiving one or two nice comments, but that's a start. What's up to Handlebar41? Thank you for the encouragement. It's very nice of you. Way to go, Beard Brother. So that's a shout out. So some corrections. In the Silver Linings Playbook episode, I mentioned a movie starring Bobby De Niro and Mickey Rourke. I said Lionheart. It's actually Angel Heart. Good movie. Check it out if you've never seen it. It's probably one of my favorite movies involving either of those dudes. What else? Oh, there was an update for my iSight camera. That's what it's called. It's an iSight, not an iCam. iCam would be too intuitive, so iSight is the fancy word that they got going. So I did the update along with the iTunes update, which I'm really afraid of what that did to my iTunes. We'll find out soon. But I did that update, and now it works, right? Hopefully the sync won't be off, like the dub won't be off, and there won't be minutes where it just pauses and you lose some frames. Because you want to see all of this animated movement, don't you? Let's see. I'm going to talk about, it's not only the Just Checking In edition. I honestly need a break. I've been grading papers, and I just read one that melted my brain, but I need to talk about something else and not think about time shift problems, not in terms of like the space-time continuum, not that paradigm. I'm talking about like somebody is talking in the past tense, but all of a sudden they're talking in the present tense. It's, or writing in this case. Let's see, the list of things I have to talk to my students tomorrow about, putting titles on their paper, time clauses, so if you say every day, you put a comma after it. Or when I was in school, comma, I didn't like to go, period. Just punctuation in general. Run-on sentences, there are a ton of them. Some people don't understand how punctuation works. That's why they're taking my class, because I got to teach them this stuff. Prepositions. A lot of times, if you are like a first or second generation kid, which a lot of my students happen to be, prepositions do not translate completely between English and a lot of languages, and the Romance languages are a big offender when it comes to that. So trying to get somebody to use on versus in, or to use during instead of in for time, it's something that takes a lot of work, and you honestly just pick it up from things like TV, movies, books, magazines, and having conversations with other native speakers. And these students, a majority of them are native speakers, but there are a couple of them who I get the feeling that they speak a lot of their native language at home. And again, with my background in ESL, since this isn't an ESL class, I can use that, and I can make certain assumptions without making an ass out of myself or them. Format essays. Yeah, so they need to, the MLA formatting, they just need to work on that. Spelling, oh god, spelling. They're overusing literally. There's a couple students who use literally, and it makes me think again of David Cross. That whole thing. If you say like I'm literally shitting my pants, that means your pants are full of shit. But they're using literally in that sense. So there's a lot of logical fallacies going on that don't make a lot of sense. Using synonyms and pronouns and repetition, like trying to get them to not overuse words. Like if you're writing about President Obama, you don't say President Obama has been the president for 4 years and some change. President Obama, oh, President Obama, President Obama, just, try saying the president, or Barack Obama, or our current president, just like spice it up. Syntax, word order, getting a lot of word order issues. And again, that just comes from if you talk all the time and you don't really practice your writing, you don't really think about the fact that we usually put a subject, a verb, and then an object, and then somewhere in there we sprinkle in adjectives and adverbs, right? And then again, like, we don't think about grammar, and we don't really teach English grammar in the way that we should. Like, international students learn grammar in a very almost like a linguistics major would. Whereas with us, aside from basic grammar, the more intense and intensive parts of grammar, because they're so uh, second nature for native speakers, we don't really stress that stuff enough. So these kids don't really, and I say kids, some of them are in their like 40s and shit, but these students, they don't understand how things don't, they don't translate from speech onto paper in a very smooth fashion unless you know how to use punctuation and how to conjugate certain verbs. So really need to drill them on that. Now the inverse, the opposite of run-on sentences, getting a lot of fragments too. It's always fun writing frag or frags on papers. Yeah. Oh, and then time shifts, which I talked about, which always makes me feel like I'm talking about time travel, which maybe I am. We'll find out soon enough. Okay, the thing I really wanted to talk about is David Bowie's new album. I like a lot of different types of music. A lot of different types of music. I was just listening to a bunch of EDM stuff right now because it keeps me awake while I slog through a lot of this, prerequisites of freshman comp writing, which it's not like not being negative. I'm just saying that, it's obvious that some of these students are in this class because they really need to sharpen specific skills. What's interesting is that some of them, it's like their grammar and all that stuff, it's pretty flawless except for one or two things, but they can't organize their ideas and their thoughts in an intro, body, and conclusion kind of way. And then the opposite is true. It's like vice versa. Some of them, the ideas are there, but they don't have the language skills on paper to get it across. Like they might be really articulate speakers, but they just can't get it on paper. But I need to talk about Bowie right now because I love Bowie. I love him so much. Ever since I was, wee high or whatever, like lower. You can't even see I was that short. I remember being a little kid, and my parents like blasting Let's Dance and China Girl, and my dad used to stay up late on Friday nights for something called Friday Night Videos, which was on NBC in the early 80s, and he would tape videos off of it, and this lasted up until probably about like the early 90s. But we had a tape that had like China Girl on it and some early Guns N' Roses later on, because that was China Girl, I think, was 84. Appetite for Destruction, the Guns N' Roses record, was Sweet Child of Mine and Welcome to the Jungle and Paradise City and all that. That was 87. It's kind of crazy. 87, I was in kindergarten. So that's going to make some of you feel really old and some of you feel very young. I don't, that's your deal. It's not my deal. But anyway, Bowie, I love Bowie because he's a chameleon, and oddly enough, though, and like this record's gotten mostly praise, but it's gotten some flack from critics just being hypercritical. Go figure. But I like The Next Day, which is the title of the record. I like it a lot because it is solid pretty much all the way through, which for Bowie records after the early 80s, I usually have a problem where like I like a handful of songs, or sometimes in some cases maybe one or two songs, or sometimes just one song, and then the rest of them kind of fall flat, which is not true of his early acoustic stuff or his pop stuff, his Ziggy stuff, which is my favorite period probably, and then the Thin White Duke period, which is like obviously my second favorite period, and then cool 80s Bowie, and then, but there were like a lot of awesome, like later 80s Bowie and 90s Bowie. There was a lot of cool stuff going on. Like mid 90s Bowie, you had Outside and the Lost Highway soundtrack, which shared one of my favorite Bowie songs, which is blanking on the title. I'm gonna have to look it up right now. Spotify, don't fail me now. No, not Lost Highway by Bon Jovi. I want Lost Highway by various artists. I'm Deranged. It had a reprise and like an edit that they did just for the movie, which if you've never seen Lost Highway, that's I think one of the most, and I lightly use the word accessible. It's one of the most accessible David Lynch films, and it has one of the best soundtracks of the 90s. It's up there with the Pulp Fiction soundtrack. It's up there with the Crow soundtrack. When music supervision was really awesome, that was probably the peak of it. The pinnacle was sort of like, 1990 to 1998-ish. 99, because CD sales went down, so they figured, let's just throw anything on a soundtrack. My cat is licking himself in a manner I wish I could. Not his genitals, but he's just sort of like, God, and he's like licking the side part right here, but I'll show you. Little paws kind of gently like holding his side. I don't know. I can't get a good angle on it, and now he's done. And he's looking at me. Oh, he just harumphed at me. Okay, back to Bowie. I can't help it. I'm a tangential thinker. Bowie, Bowie, as he would say it, or the British say it, or the guys on Flight of the Conchords say it. So the thing with Bowie and this record is it's solid all the way through, like I said. Let me tell you what my favorite songs are. Both of the singles, Where Are We Now and The Stars Are Out Tonight, are both really great songs. But I'll tell you what probably my 4 favorites are, and this isn't even, there's still some other songs that I'm kind of getting a handle on, but my 4 favorites are probably, it's a portion of the record. It's the middle 4 of the record. So starting from track 5 to track 8, we've got of course the single Where Are They Now, Valentine's Day, which I should have been leaked on Valentine's Day because it's a really good song. But If You Can See Me and I'd Rather Be High, tracks 7 and 8, are my favorite songs on the record so far. Everything else, the title track, the second track, Dirty Boys, Love Is Lost, and the latter half of the album are really good. Okay, so the thing I like about 7 is their female vocals that open it up, and it kind of has like a Floyd Great Gig in the Sky meets Deftones Knife Party kind of thing going on with that. It's very, very propulsive, very fast moving, and it's just very modern sounding. And then I'd Rather Be High really out Oasis's Oasis, and then there's of course the comments that Oasis was just ripping off like the Beatles and then other artists like Slade, but and there's a little bit of Johnny Greenwood isms in the guitar playing. So there's like a pinch of Radiohead in there too, but it's very Brit-pop sounding, like 90s Brit-pop sounding, which I love. I'm going to turn the volume down really quick. I'm just going to peruse some of the songs so I can remember what I like. Dirty Boys, track 2. What I'd say about this song is, first off, Bowie's playing baritone sax on it, which is awesome, and there's some almost like post-hardcore like guitar playing going on that reminds me of bands like Botch or Minus the Bear. Dave Knudson is the guitarist in both of those bands. Stars Are Out Tonight, good song. Love Is Lost, which one is this? Sounds like 80s Bowie, good times. Boss of Me. I like this song, not totally. Oh, this one's good. It has more Bowie sax. Dancing Out in Space. Jazz Jeff Lord. Nice and trippy. Super poppy. Kind of reminds me of like modern love. How Does the Grass Grow? More 80s Bowie. You Will Set Fire on the World and The Stars Are Out at Night. These 2 songs are kind of like, to me, like a secret love letter to James Osterberg, aka Iggy Pop. And then You Will Set the World on Fire, track 12, is the one you can kind of hear in the background. And the song is very dark garage rock, kind of like the Stooges meets the Kinks. It's really good. You Feel So Lonely You Could Die, great Bowie harmonies, and a little bit more of that Johnny Greenwood-esque. The guitar player for these recording sessions is using a Digitech whammy pedal, so he's doing a lot of pitch shifting, which gives it a very spacey feel, a la, that Ziggy period, and pre-Ziggy with like David Bowie self-titled, which had Space Oddity, right? Somebody can correct me. Okay, and the last track, Heat, is a really atmospheric album closer. Very dark sounding. Sounds like something that, could be used in a reboot of the movie, or a remake of the movie Legend, with Tim Curry and Tom Cruise. All around, what I like about this record is I feel like it's a solid retrospective of what he's done over the last 25 years. Not completely everything he's ever done, but it's a retrospective of kind of where he left off in the early 80s and making its way through the rest of that stuff. Now, somebody could say, well, that sounds boring. If you like David Bowie, it's not boring. It's just David being David, and I think that's the thing, I forgot who said it. I think it was Shirley Manson from Garbage. Young bands break ground. Young bands are seminal. Old bands figure out how to keep perfecting their sound. And this goes back to something I said before, I think, talking about George Lucas, which is the whole Walt Whitman thing. Leaves of Grass, that was his magnum opus, and he just made that more and more solid. Maybe you don't want that out of an artist, but I think, for as long as David Bowie has been doing what he's doing, this is kind of a good thing. I'd rather have this than a very lackluster, inspired but lackluster experimental record. I like that this is very straightforward, but it borrows from tropes that he hasn't borrowed from in a long time. I mean, if you listen to one of my all-time favorite, and I think one of the most underrated Bowie records, was The Man Who Sold the World, which has a huge debt to whatever, the same primordial ooze that Zeppelin and Sabbath crawled out of, because it's a hard rock record. It's with a pinch of Syd Barrett era Pink Floyd in there too. Sort of like, imagine, take Ozzy out of Sabbath, and then cross-pollinate Jimmy Page and Tony Iommi with David Gilmour, and you get Mick Ronson, and that's basically, and it's cool because it's the precursor to the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust. So you kind of get to hear this proto version of it before Ziggy's fully realized. So that's a great record. So in this record, he, some of those hard rock tropes come out in some of the songs, which is honestly, for somebody like me who likes guitar-driven music, and music that's heavy, not necessarily just, like chug 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 kind of heavy, but emotionally heavy, this is a welcome change. And to be fair, like, a lot of songs like Bring Me the Head of the Disco King, either the kind of jazzy version that's on the record it's on, or the remix version that was on the Underworld soundtrack, that has a guest appearance by Maynard James Keenan from Tool and A Perfect Circle, which the latter is something, one of my all-time favorite Bowie-related songs. And then the original version is cool to hear to contrast with that version, but I would prefer the latter. Like, if I was stranded on a desert island and I could only bring that Bowie song from that period, it'd be that version. But that's also because I like Maynard. And oddly enough, that's a version that was remixed by Danny Lohner, who used to be in Nine Inch Nails, and Wes Borland, Blacklight Burns, and infamously of Limp Bizkit fame. I could do a whole thing on nu metal. That would be a whole other whole other post. But anyway, wow, we're 20 minutes in, and that didn't feel like 20 minutes to me. Okay, so anyway, bottom line, out of 5 stars, it still has to grow on me, so to be safe, I'd say 4.5, verging on 5, maybe 4.8. I really like the record, and in this era of this kind of singles-driven digital era of just like pick and choose which songs you like and never listen to a whole collection of songs, never listen to an album. Yeah, Toby's with me on this issue. It's really hard to find full-length records that are really enjoyable. I know, Tobes. He's gonna scratch something. In this period of time where tastes are changing, where what we consider, you know, a good length of time to have, you know, our attention directed completely at something, when all that is changing, David Bowie, you know, secretly cobbles together one of his best, you know, post 70s and 80s works. So if you like Bowie or you just like new music, check out The Next Day, because I really liked it. And you get the sense from the album art, which is the album art for his other album, Heroes, with just like a square placed over his face from that album cover. You get the sense that it is him kind of looking back retrospectively on probably from that Berlin period till now. But for me, it feels more like you know, early '80s Bowie till now. So anyway, you'll dig it, I guarantee. And if you don't like it, who fucking cares? It's all subjective. All right, good times.